When Eleanor Monroe bumped into her ex's father, William Kennedy, at the gym, she never imagined how that one unexpected moment would spark something neither of them could ignore. What began as casual conversation slowly turned into secret dinners, lingering glances, and a connection that defied the rules. As feelings deepen, Eleanor must choose between what's easy and what feels right. A bold story about timing, second chances, and the love you never see coming. Tap the like button, drop a comment telling me your favorite moment, and hit subscribe so you never miss another videos. It started like any other Monday morning. The gym smelled of lavender-scented disinfectant, rubber mats, and that familiar buzz of early risers trying to sweat away their weekend sins. I had my earbuds in, my water bottle ready, and my playlist set to a steady beat. I wasn't trying to impress anyone, just trying to reclaim a piece of myself that I'd lost a few months ago, specifically, when Thomas Kennedy and I ended our messy, whirlwind relationship. Thomas had been the kind of guy you fall for because of the way he smiles when he's nervous and the way he texts good morning like he means it. But that kind of love isn't always enough. His insecurities, the distance, the slow shift in how he spoke to me, all of it chipped away at us. So, I ended it. And I walked away feeling hollow but certain. The gym became my escape. My place to rebuild. Until that day, when I saw him. I had just finished a set on the leg press when someone stepped into my peripheral vision. I looked up, already assuming it was someone about to ask how many sets I had left. But instead, I found myself staring at a man I instantly recognized, William Kennedy, Thomas's father. I hadn't seen him since last Thanksgiving. I remembered thinking even back then how different he was from most men his age. Tall, lean, with gray at his temples that only made him more striking. He had this quiet confidence, the kind that filled a room without trying. I remembered how he'd helped carve the turkey while Thomas and I bickered over board games. He barely said a word then, but his eyes had watched me with interest, the kind I never quite knew how to read. "Eleanor?" he asked, a smile tugging at the corner of his lips. I pulled out one of my earbuds, suddenly hyper-aware of how sweaty I looked. "Mr. Kennedy?" He chuckled and shook his head. "William. No need for the Mr. anymore." There was a pause. A loaded moment, really. We both knew the situation was awkward, but he didn't look away. "You look great," he added, eyes flicking down and then quickly back up. "You always did." It was a compliment. Simple. But coming from him, it did something to me. Maybe because it had been weeks since I'd felt seen in that way. Maybe because it came from someone who wasn't supposed to say it. We exchanged a few more words, casual stuff. Then he asked if I wanted to do a cool-down lap with him around the track upstairs. I could have said no. I probably should have. But instead, I nodded. That lap turned into two. Then we sat near the smoothie bar, sipping protein shakes and laughing in a way that felt easy. Natural. He didn't bring up Thomas, and neither did I. It was like we were both dancing around it, mutually deciding it didn't matter right now. When I got home, I found a message request on Instagram. "William." He'd found me somehow, and the message was short. "It was really nice seeing you today. I enjoyed our talk. If you ever want to continue it, maybe over dinner sometime." I stared at the message longer than I should have. My fingers hovered over my phone as I debated what was right, what was reckless, and what I wanted. I answered, "Dinner sounds nice." The following Saturday, I drove up to his house, a modern colonial tucked into the edge of an upscale suburb. It looked even more beautiful at sunset, the glow of the porch light warming the soft cream exterior. I had butterflies. Not just first-date nerves, but the kind that flutter when you know you're crossing into a place you might never return from. He opened the door looking effortlessly put together, black button-down, sleeves rolled, jeans that hugged his frame just right. He smelled like cedarwood and something subtle I couldn't place. But it was him, and it made my pulse quicken. "You look stunning," he said as he let me in. "Thank you," I replied, smoothing the hem of my dress. Dinner was warm, home-cooked, with wine that made conversation flow easier. We talked about everything, his work as an architect, my latest photography projects, the kind of music we both grew up on. It never once felt like I was talking to my ex's dad. It felt like I was with someone who saw me, not as a girl who used to date his son, but as a woman in her own right. After dessert, we moved to the living room. He put on some low jazz, poured another glass of wine, and we sat close, too close for the space between us to mean nothing. When he leaned in, it wasn't sudden. It was slow. A moment suspended in air, as if waiting for my permission. I didn't stop him. The kiss was gentle at first, just a brush of lips, but something inside me bloomed. It was the kind of kiss that made you forget everything else. He touched my cheek, my jaw, and I melted. There was electricity under my skin, and I hadn't felt that alive in so long. I probably shouldn't have done that, he said, pulling back just an inch, his voice low and rough. But I wanted you to, I whispered. He searched my eyes like he was making sure I meant it. And I did. Every confusing, wild part of me did. We didn't rush anything. The night unfolded in slow moments, fingers brushing, eyes lingering, the silence between us growing more intimate. He told me about his divorce, the loneliness, how he'd stopped letting people in. I told him about Thomas, the breakup, how I wasn't looking for anything, but how I also couldn't ignore what I was feeling. The hours passed, and before I knew it, midnight had come and gone. He walked me to the door, and when he kissed me goodnight again, it felt different. Like the start of something, not just the end of an evening. We didn't talk about what it meant. We didn't need to. Sometimes, feelings are too raw to label too soon. Over the next few weeks, we saw each other again, quietly. Dinners, morning hikes, coffee runs where our hands brushed but never fully held. It was our secret world. I didn't post about it, didn't tell friends. Not because I was ashamed, but because it was ours, and I wasn't ready to share. Every time I was with him, I felt this pull, this deeper understanding between two people who'd lived through disappointment and still chose to feel again. There was passion, but there was also tenderness. When he kissed me, it wasn't just hunger, it was intention. When he looked at me, it wasn't possessive, it was reverent. One night, he invited me over again. The fireplace was lit, casting a soft orange glow across the living room. We sat close, his arm wrapped loosely around my waist. I leaned into him, my head against his shoulder, feeling the rise and fall of his breath. I haven't felt this way in years, he said, his voice thick with honesty. I know this isn't conventional, but I don't want to pretend like this doesn't mean something. I turned to him, brushing my fingers along his jaw. I don't either. The rest of that night was filled with whispered promises, soft laughter, long pauses where words would have only gotten in the way. We didn't need to cross lines to know we were standing on sacred ground. What we were building was about trust, about desire that goes beyond the physical. It was about being chosen, deliberately. But the world outside eventually crept in. Thomas found out. Not because we told him, but because nothing stays hidden forever. He called me, furious, confused. My dad, Eleanor? I didn't have the perfect explanation. All I could do was speak the truth. I didn't plan it. But it's real. And I won't apologize for how I feel. There was silence. Then a click. I cried that night. Not because I regretted anything, but because the weight of what we were risking finally hit me. But William held me, whispered that love, real love, wasn't about playing it safe. And he was right. In time, things settled. Thomas didn't come around much anymore, but I accepted that. Some chapters end so others can begin. Now, months later, I still find myself smiling every time William pulls me in close, every time he tells me he's proud of me, every time I see the way his eyes light up when I walk into a room. Our beginning was unconventional, unexpected, but it was honest. And in a world where so many connections are fleeting, ours was a fire that only grew stronger. I met my ex's dad at the gym. And somewhere between the weight sets and the wine glasses, I found a new version of myself, braver, bolder, and finally, loved the way I never knew I needed.